This is our website, and we'll go ahead and give you a small introduction to it. First of all, we did the Book of Mormon map based on the Great Lakes theory that Book of Mormon actually occurred around the Great Lakes area. And the project was done by J.C. Smith, Steve Hall, and Spencer Taylor. So first we'll show you how to proceed. Over here on the right, we have a scrolling window that will give you some more pertinent information with every radio button that you can click. Up here on the very top, we've got a timeline of events starting at 2400 BC and then culminating when Moroni buries the plate at 421 AD in the Hill Cumorah. And then you can see the legend as you click through these radio buttons. These will change, and they will each give you different sets of information. So we'll just start by showing you 600 BC. Some of the features that we have here. You can see in the left side of the screen we've got Jerusalem. And if we actually click Jerusalem, it'll give us some more information. HTML code that you can scroll through. Some have images, some just have captions. But we'll progress through our timeline a little bit to just give you a look. Now we'll go to 590 BC, and then we can see that this line is showing a journey. So we've got from Jerusalem to the tip of where Nephi constructed a boat and then sailed with his family to the promised land, or the proposed promised land. Okay, and then we'll jump ahead a few hundred years to 225 BC. And now we've got the establishment of a few cities here, represented by these very attractive pyramids. So you click on it, and then it just gives you a small description. The city of Zarahemla tells you a little bit about that. And then if you read up in the top right, for every radio button you click, it gives you a brief explanation of what you might be experiencing in this time frame, and it gives you a scripture. And not only does it give you a scripture up top, but that scripture is highlighted and referenced to the scripture set in LDS.org. So you can read all those scriptures within context. So now we're going to jump ahead to our favorite point in the timeline, to when Christ descends in the Americas. Now, we have Christ here, and we're going to go ahead and click on him, and we can read a little bit about that story. And of course, on the right side of the screen, we've got the time frame, 34 AD. We have the scripture, and then even more scriptures and an explanation of what might be going on. And then we've referenced from LDS.org. When you click, that scripture will change as well. And then a nice, beautiful picture in HTML in our pop-up. Why don't we go to 421 AD? And as we all know, 421 AD is when Moroni finally buried the plates in the Hill Cumorah, right here above the Finger Lakes. And if we click, once again, we have an explanation and a beautiful image, along with scriptures on the far right. So we've really felt like we've explained at least this theory fairly well, and we've represented it with these scriptures and with these images on this map. Now we'll go ahead and show you some more technical background of this project.
So here is the HTML for our page, which includes all of our radio buttons here that click on and move our iframe. We also have our scripts for open layers, as well as our KML.js, our JavaScript that does most of our panning and zooming and setting of our iframes. And then at the bottom we have our map div, which contains the open layers map with all of our images in them, as well as two iframes, one that holds the small explanation at the top of the page, and then an iframe below that that contains our welcome page as well as the scriptures from LDS.org.
And the majority of our code is actually hidden in JavaScript and inside the KMLs. Each KML had a particular challenge because we had to figure out a way to add HTML when you made the click window. So we had to go in there and change the code accordingly to show what we wanted to show. And then we set up some JavaScript to make to make the map work, along with the pop-ups and displaying which pop-ups we wanted to display on each radio click. So it posed its own individual challenge.
So let's look at the JavaScript in our kml.js file. On loading the page, this init function gets called, which loads our map div with an open layers map, and then populates that map with a bunch of layers. Each one of these sections of codes is an individual layer, and we have quite a few of them. I'll scroll down through them. Once we've loaded all of our layers in and made them active, then we set up a select with this piece of code, which allows us to click on our KML icons and have HTML be displayed with pictures and images and additional information.
Exactly. So we've got, you can see this function right here, this function on pop-up close event, and then it unselects based on that pop-up. So this JavaScript was really critical to us to having the pop-ups. All these variables we set up to make it so it would select the feature attributes and then present the feature description just based on that.
As we go down here through our code, after we've dealt with all of our pop-ups, we have a few personalized functions that we used in our web map. The first one is a zoom to current layers. So each time you click a radio button, it goes through this function and sets all of the layers that are on and then zooms to them. Now what determines which layers are on is in this bigger function, and this function manages all of our radio buttons. So here we have each radio button has an ID, and then it also has an array with the numbers for each layer that we want to turn on for that radio button. And as we go through, at first we turn off all the layers, and then depending on which radio button we've selected, we then turn on the appropriate numbers for each of the layers, as well as set our iframe to the appropriate scriptures. In this case, for the first one, Ether chapter 6, verses 4 through 5, 8, 11 through 12. So that's how our radio buttons work. And then as we go at the end of this function, once we've turned on the layers, we zoom to the appropriate layers to make sure that our map is viewing them properly.
Mm-hmm. And now, why don't we just go back and show you, now that you've seen all the code, like you can see here how everything really comes to life. If you look on the right side of the screen, notice how that changes, and then it zooms to the scriptures accordingly. It has gone ahead and zoomed this window to the extents of the layers. We have a pop-up that shows information. We click another layer tab, and then we can see here that it shows the timeline once again, the scripture, highlights it in LDS.org, shows us some more information, pop-up with HTML. So you can see how our code has turned into this project, and we feel like it's been a pretty big success.